Hey everyone, I'm Yuval, head of platform growth at ironSource. I've been in the company for the past 7 years, and my job is to grow level play mediation clients. Great, today I would like to talk about your time allocation versus your growth potential. So my friend Pareto here and me would like to ask you if you're spending 80% of your time on 20% of your growth potential. Great, so let's start by looking at your business. And basically, if your app is this racing car, monetization is its engine, right? It's based on retention and playtime and generates revenue from in-app purchase and in-app ads in different ratios. You then need to fuel it with high scales of high-quality users, which is your user acquisition and your organic growth. To examine my point, let's focus on monetization and specifically on in-app ads, which is built from two main growth areas. One is ad optimization, and the other is ad strategy. By ad optimization, I mean maximizing the revenue you get per impression. We measure it with KPIs like eCPM, ARPDAU, and fill rate, etc., and we optimize it by A/B testing different waterfall setups, adding and dropping different ad networks and ad sources, and even choosing your mediation. Ad strategy is the implementation of ads in your app, or what impressions you're able to generate from your users. We measure this by user engagement metrics like engagement rate and impressions per engaged user. And ad strategy work means optimizing your placements, their viewability, timing, frequency, connection to economy. It also means a segmentation of your users and their ads, and it also includes the ad units that you're using in your app. When we asked you, how do you spend or allocate your time on monetization topics, it was very clear that most of you spend the majority of time on ad optimization. And much less and significantly less time on ad strategy. And this despite the fact that we see huge and usually bigger potential on ad strategy, and I'm talking 3 to 4x bigger potential. So ad strategy is this shiny gem that still doesn't get enough attention by most of the industry. So let's figure out why. I see 3 reasons why companies will invest less on ad strategy. So it's risk, expertise, and data accessibility. And let's start by talking about the risk. When you're changing the implementation of ads in your app, you will probably affect very important KPIs like retention, playtime, in-app purchase, while when you change your waterfall, you won't. So it's definitely riskier, but should we do it or not? So based on previous GameFest research that we've done, we saw that users who engage with rewarded video are more likely to play, they have a higher spend per user, and they have better retention and they play more sessions per day. So it's riskier, but it's a risk worth taking. And by doing the right work on ad strategy, you can actually improve your most important KPIs. Next up is expertise. So I want to start with this challenge, structural challenge that you guys are facing. And basically, ad strategy work requires very good collaboration between monetization managers, product managers, and app or game designers that are usually sitting under different teams with different goals and different priorities. So in order to crack the process here, you actually need to look well internally and maybe even make changes in your structure to make this work. Then you need to become an expert. You must understand what your user needs in your app. You need to understand what your competitors are doing and what's their ad strategy, and you need to really understand all the ad units in the ecosystem and how they affect your users. So you must become an expert, or you must use an expert's help. These 2 reasons are why we decided in ironSource to have a dedicated game design consultation team that focuses only on level play mediation clients' ad strategy. You will hear Anna, our game design consultant, later today on a session. So we talked about risk and expertise. Now let's look at data. or what success looks like. So let's start by talking about the right KPIs. And I mentioned them before, the user engagement KPIs, and let's review them. So the first one would be engagement rate, which means the percentage of your users who are watching ads. We say that engagement rate is king because earlier impressions statistically brings more installs, so they're basically worth more. Engagement rate is also the best way to evaluate your growth potential, as it's proportional to your revenue. So if you have an engagement rate of 20% on rewarded video and your category's benchmark is 40%, you can roughly estimate that you can double your rewarded video revenue. Next up is impressions per engaged user, which is pretty self-explanatory. The interesting points about this KPI is that more videos per user per day means more revenue, but also a decline in eCPM through the videos. Also interesting is that many videos per day really affect the user experience, right? So these are not necessarily negative points, but definitely stuff you need to consider when you look at the overall changes and how it affects all the KPIs. Impressions per DAU is the multiplication of engagement rate and impressions per engaged user. Next up is getting your categories benchmarks. You must know your categories benchmark and you must get it from your mediation growth partner. And if you have a clear target and you know where you're going, it's much easier to prioritize this whole area. So let's look at a few examples. We're starting with an RPG game heavily based on in-app purchase. And what can you see here? On the left side, there's the benchmarks, the median, the low percentile, and the high percentile of engagement rate and impressions per engaged user for this subcategory of this game. So the story here is that this game had a complicated implementation of watching a rewarded video and get a reward. So it was really hard to find and execute it. It put them on a low point in terms of engagement rate. And the interesting thing here is that you can see that the users who did watch the videos watched tons of them, and they were way above the benchmark. This basically means that video in this game has high value for the user, but it's just not accessible enough for many users. So when we looked at this game and we built the recommendations, we calculated a growth potential of above 40% because we estimated that they can reach the median engagement rate of their genre. So following our recommendations and after making changes to the placement in 2 phases, they eventually reached an engagement rate of 60%. And this is while keeping retention and in-app purchase stable and growing ad revenue by more than 50%. Next example is a runner game that didn't want to bombard their users with Interstitial. They were really concerned about that. So you can see that they started with a low point of engagement rate and below 1 video per day per daily active user of Interstitial in their game. So we looked into the game, and basically our recommendation was to play with the grace period and try to A/B test a more aggressive approach, and we estimated a growth potential of 15% by reaching the median benchmark. So what happened here, this client gently reduced the grace period, eventually bringing it to an engagement rate of 37%, had a very minor effect on retention, and growing overall ARPU by 15%, while still maintaining a very gentle impressions per DAU and not bombarding the users with many ads, with great results. Last but not least, this is an app beyond game. It's a photo beauty editor that just had a very bad timing of the interstitial. They've shown it after the photo was already done instead of showing it during the built-in waiting time in the app. So they started off with a very low engagement rate. We gave them some very easy to implement recommendations according to them. And look at what happened. The engagement rate grew from 10.5 to 24%. Impressions per DAU almost multiplied. Retention remained stable, and ARPU grew by almost 50%. So, what do you do next? In terms of benchmark, as a follow-up to Appfest and this session, you will get your categories benchmarks from us based on our data. if you're a level play mediation client, we'll also share with you your growth potential and what do we think should be your next steps. On the product side, we're looking internally about the options for productizing benchmark features on level play mediation. So this is about benchmarks. In terms of ad strategy expertise, Anna, our expert, will come up later and share her knowledge. And what about UA? So we see a very, very similar trend on user acquisition of time spent versus growth potential between campaign optimization and creative optimization. You will hear all about that tomorrow by our master of creatives, Dan. I hope you enjoyed my session. I wish you a great day and a great Appfest.